Dimitri, we've only met yesterday, but I'm so happy to have this conversation with you, and I really want you to take us a little bit back to the moment you have met Adam. What I've read is that it was a kind of a spontaneous and intuitive decision for you to approach Adam, the curatorial team of Documenta 14. What was the sort of impetus there? And let's return to that moment.
Some of you, if you were, because we also discussed about this, there was this question of how this project started. So I will say it again because some people might not have been there. I met Adam accidentally in Thessaloniki, Greece, not in Kassel, not in Athens. It's my hometown. Adam visited to visit the Thessaloniki Biennial with the team. And I joined them through a common friend to a taverna. And I just, he was a nice guy. And then we had a discussion. And then I realized that he is the artistic director to organize the biggest exhibition in the world. And I thought that this makes a good story to start. And I proposed to Adam the next day, to observe him while he observes, because his job also is a kind of observation. So it's an observation of an observation and another observation. So it's I usually start with characters, not with topics. I didn't want to make a film about Documenta 14 or the art world. I started with the character and his journey, which also became my field of exploration and observation. I like to start with an inspiring character, but that is something that you feel it. When you meet somebody and you feel a certain, let's say, you understand there's some quality, or it's enjoyable, or whatever, or it's charismatic. Adam doesn't like the word, but okay.
A good story. Adam, you were a good story. Greece is known for long stories, long journeys, but perhaps let's again return to the beginning, and actually to the invitation, or actually your proposal for Documenta 14, which initially had in mind to divide Documenta into both Athens and Kassel, at a moment where, let's say, geopolitically and the kind of political scenario, there was quite a polarization between Germany and Greece. Can you take us to that moment as well? What was the reason, and what were your ambitions at the time?
I always like to think about this project not so much in terms of dividing between and this kind of polarization and what I think was early on often received, especially in Germany, as a way of taking Documenta away or stealing it and so forth. I thought that that was more an attempt to rather connect and not divide, and to give some reality back to Documenta. I was thinking about the realness of the moment in 1955 when Documenta was, so to say, established or invented by Arnold Bode and the whole group of people who were around him and who are now subject to too many scrutinies in Germany, because it seems that the moment of creation or bringing into life the Documenta is also tainted with some connections to the Nazi past of Germany 10 years after the Second World War, when Documenta was created. It turns out now, through the research of many art historians and historians, that there were chief figures, including Werner Haftmann and some others, who were very clearly members of NSDAP or Nazi sympathizers, fully aligned with the regime, that then they so there was something about this Documenta that kind of reflected or mirrored a larger reality of Bundesrepublik at that time, and I thought that we have to do something that this Documenta is kind of very much on the pulse of time, not in a sense of just passively reflecting the zeitgeist of some sort, and I don't like this term really, but I thought about the idea of the context that would make it apparent what sort of political and societal realities we were living back then in 2013 or 14, and obviously it was a moment when the so-called Greek crisis, which is a way of stigmatizing that country alongside the other countries of the European South. And the crisis was gaining a momentum, so it was a downward spiral, and there was a complete depression and kind of economic crash and sanctions and all that. We might remember what was happening then. So when I was writing the proposal in summer 2013, the contours of what is to happen soon were already fairly clear, and I thought, we have to try to have this Documenta somehow embrace this tension or a situation of the North and South, which is also reflecting a larger power balance globally. So that was the reason why I think I wrote this proposal, and then the exhibition pretty much fulfilled what was in the original proposal, yes, quite literally. So there was no deviation from the script or from the score that I formulated. However, when I was appointed as artistic director, I was told that I don't have to do what I promised. That I'm now free to finally do this Documenta in some other way. But for me, it was a very strange idea that I should change something there and invent another exhibition for Kassel and so forth. So I started to work in Athens.
But I think you also speak in the film at some point about this idea that having the two locations, being both in Athens and in Kassel, allows visitors, to re-encounter, to repeat, to see things a second time, perhaps, in terms of the works that are presented. And maybe that is kind of interesting, because that's the beginning of a dialogue. No? That's the beginning of a dialogue between things that you see that start and remember, act of remembering them, the act of re-encountering. So perhaps you'd like to add a few thoughts on that? Because not just the tension between cities, but it's also what it does to visitors, what it does to you as somebody interested, to you as a visitor, who comes to Documenta.
Yeah, I mean, today I went to see the show of Medardo Rosso at Mumok, and what I found very striking in this show, that there are several sculptures by Medardo Rosso which are they have to be seen as sort of alternate takes on a motif. Okay, so it's not important. It's not the repetition in a kind of Andy Warhol sense of like basically like repeating the motif like mechanically and adding like some kind of tint or another way of rendering the motif, but the repetition itself becomes a theme. With Rosso, it's something else, because I think he was dead serious about every repetition, and that makes these sculptures fascinating, because you have 4 renderings or renditions of one moment, famously impressionist sculptor, as he was already in 1905 named. So it should be about the fleeting impression of something, maybe an expression of a face, or a moment of a mother kissing a child and so forth. So something that is a short moment, and this is kind of like captured in sculpture, but then it's repeated. And for me, repetition is not only fascinating as a sort of compulsion, but also it's a very productive maneuver that allows you to that affords you certain time. So my hope was that since there was a time between the opening in Athens and Kassel, and we had to do the whole show quasi again in a short time, that there would be these moments of like kind of stumbling upon something that we have pretty much seen or known, but in a different way, in a different place. So I was kind of hoping that it would produce an opportunity for visitors of the show to not only tick boxes and say that they saw the show, but also maybe this moment of recognizing things or recognizing them as something already seen, a déjà vu of a sort. So yeah, that was like on a kind of formal philosophical level one of the intentions of doing this show, beyond the kind of political intention that obviously was a main driving force of the whole idea.
Thank you, Adam. Andrea, I'd like you to speak a little bit about the role of the curator or the curatorial team within, obviously, EXERGUE, but perhaps also beyond. And in this context, I'm thinking specifically about this tension of, in one hand, being appointed by a state mechanism. In your case, you are the director of a German state museum. In the case of DOCUMENTA, the appointment process by delegation in a certain sense. So in a certain way, there is this idea of state reason, Staatsräson, right? That also always infiltrates the work, and I think we see that quite well in some parts of the film. But also the role of the curator, obviously, and that is also why we have these large processes of selection and the review processes of proposals. The ambition of the curator being, let's say, an agitator, public intellectual, somebody who raises important questions of the time and the current contemporary moment. And obviously, the public intellectual works best when he or she is outside. No? It's like, as Edward Said said, the uninvited outsider. But now you are, not you personally, but that figure of the curator we're sort of invoking right now, is actually in that kind of dilemma. And I think the film really shows that over and over, the curator/curatorial team. And perhaps you could give us a little bit of your view on this difficult issue.
I try. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I try to take some points of the already articulated statement you made. I guess it's really about more profession at stake. In the case of the film, there's one profession, it's the filmmaker, and it's extraordinary labor of really high quality, unusual also quality for such an enterprise, and also of love, I will say, love for the object and specificness. Maybe we can speak about this later on, but it's also the profession, as you say, of the curator, in this case also / director, which again is has to do with so much commitment and so much labor, but also a form of trust in something that in one moment of the movie, Paul Preciado really beautifully defines as the difference between what is public and what is private, and what the commons are, and why this is importantly public, and what does it mean public, and particularly when it goes down to German state, as you were mentioning. I guess the main issue, and I mentioned the profession of the filmmaker because this is a film that will deserve and will probably also analyzed by film thinkers. It's a film that thinks and makes you thinking whilst you're following. It's a kind of pensive film. It's extraordinary. It makes you really think about so much. But in the specific case of your question, I guess the choice Adam made is admirable, of having a team, a collective, and having specific voices that particularly emerges, I guess, but not for special reason, because it's a thinker, Paul Preciado. But what I felt as someone who makes this profession, and is always a profession of learning more than a profession of teaching to some extent, learning how to maybe to share, is that you are devastatingly alone, in fact. And what I learned watching the film almost twice, I would say, is also what I experienced, and I think I think it's been probably experienced also by the following team of the Documenta, which is that in the end we are talking about professionalism and professions, but perhaps within the realm of the nest, let's call it as such, the institution that is supposed to host and to make you working in the best condition possible, this professionalism is somehow missing. And what do I mean by this? I mean that perhaps the shift that happened in the arts and in making arts, and that Adam has experienced so importantly throughout his work, throughout the year he's been working, hasn't been followed by an institutional transformation. And I think we all suffer a little bit of the same. And by this I mean, whilst in the art we speak about ethics of love and care and attention and learning and what does it mean really engagement, in those that should facilitate, we are still in the era of what in Germany you call Wissenschaft, This obsession for wissenschaftlich, and therefore this technicality that has no capacity to begin a very dialogue and maybe to teach what should be done and what shouldn't be done. What does it mean, a budget for real? What does it mean to stay within it? What is part of it and what is not? But the basic is how the dialogue can run constantly in a way that we all get to the point where we want to go. And I think this is really somehow missing. It turns out generating this sense of solitude or the sense of extreme fragility, which is a fragility which we all are, both institution and human beings in this moment in time, but in the art is particularly visible in my impression. And what I encountered, and I come from a place that is a beginning, or come from a professional place that is a beginning of the movie, as a place that was doubly hunted, not only because of the origin, it's a building that was inaugurated and wanted by Adolf Hitler, but also because of the tragedy that accompanied auch Viennale. What I learned is that this infrastructure is driven by an obsession for quietness, what keeps us quiet? How can we make sure that the press doesn't make noise, and how can we be sure that we are in an environment that doesn't produce any form of destabilization? And obviously art is an unstable form and destabilized by inherently, So it doesn't work this way. And numbers, right? And numbers and this other obsession, which is how can you keep the number a major preoccupation. So this doesn't correspond to a real knowledge, and unfortunately, a knowledge of what does it mean to run culturally, whatever, not a theater, but like to make the theater working, to make an art institution working. I don't want to generalize, but this is what I experienced. And I have the feeling this is exactly what happened again on the following documenta, because I experienced it on my skin. I just arrived, I was parachuted, and it was myself, completely by myself. And this is becomes a titanic enterprise in which everything starts collapsing. First of all, your own certainty about what you can do and what you will do. This doesn't mean that there is an heroism or there is a form of heroism. It just means that it's really challenging, no? And I think it would be super important at some point there was a transmission of the changes that have to do with this profession. They are fundamental, no? Well, a transmission towards the, I don't know how to call it, bureaucratic apparatus or like, I mean, I hate to speak about this, but in fact your question was also mentioning this. So in the end,
but it seems also, I mean, like looking at the next documenta, which has been postponed, and there's been all kinds of issues around it. It seems that these protocols are being rewritten as we're speaking. It seems that perhaps what we sense in this film as the specter of something to come, and maybe that should be the end of our discussion, but we sense, that there is a shift happening in the methodology and how the infrastructure becomes kind of more a tool of capture, of control, of maybe censorship, I think was also mentioned at some point. But that these infrastructures of control are being now spelled out more aggressively, more directly, institutional bodies are being implemented in this process, not of generosity and comfort, so that the curator can actually work within the best most possible conditions, but more in terms of double-checking and controlling the DNA of every decision and the direction in which things go.
Absolutely. I mean, like the obelisk, no? In fact, the reality, when we shouldn't forget, is this call. So this selection end up to choose always someone who doesn't necessarily belong by background, language, and provenance, right? So there is a process of settling in. It's inevitable, and it's a real process. It takes time, no? And it requires a form of hospitality. And it doesn't look it's going towards this direction, as you said, and as you were mentioning. I mean, there's always hope that things can change, but it's really much about this. And what does it mean to be, to generate hospitality towards some festival director that's not, let's say, from Vienna, right? How do you settle in? How do you manage to not to have this terrifying moment of friction that is inevitable at the beginning, because it's not your language, it's not the culture, it's not your world, no? So, yeah.
Thank you. Franziska. Franziska has worked with Lois Weinberger, in 2 documentas. Am I losing? In the 1997 documenta by Catherine David, which is considered the sort of first critical documenta engaging with the social and political issues. And then again, documenta 14th. And I'd be curious, maybe if you could reflect on the changes of attitudes, the changes also of your experience of working both in Kassel and the context of documenta around these 2. Sorry, I cannot look at you because somehow I'm fading out. So I'm going to look at in the context of the 2 documentas.
I think they are the 2 documentas are they in a way they are coming. They are comparable a little bit. So I think they both were.
No, wait a second. Excuse me.
Try this one.
Oh.
So yeah, I think they both were very innovative, as you said. Documenta 10, when Catherine David did it, she brought so many new elements into this big show, like. She invited philosophers. She made these discussions, 100 guests, 100 days, 100 guests. So she invited artists, philosophers, urbanists, writers and lot of people to speak every day another lecture, and referring to the 100 days of Joseph Beuys when he was in 1972, when he was present all the time during the Documenta and speaking with everybody. And this was a very innovative thing to do this, to bring this to Documenta, because it's an exhibition about art and not about art market. Mm-hmm. And I think these two documentas have the same approach to art. And in Documenta 14, the really innovative thing was to decide or to make a political decision to bring Documenta also to Athens, to make it as a main platform, not only a platform to present the Documenta, to reflect also the life at Athens at that time, because it was the situation at that we don't remember now hardly. It's far away now, but at that time it was, for the Greek people, it's not so far away. So the crisis was really major. It was a major crisis in Greece, and through culture or through art, you can make this connection. You can give something back, or they were treated so bad from the European Union, especially from Germany. So Germany, Greece, this was a very difficult relationship at that time. And but as you see in this film, it was not so easy. I had the impression that the Greek people could not welcome this with open arms, so it was quite difficult to organize, as you see with the museum, with the Emst, or the difficulties with the director, but she was fighting for her country and for her artists. And through this film, you see the making of, and you see the details of such an process. And this is the interesting in this film. So as an artist, when you are participating as an artist, the curators don't tell you about this. You have your appointments, you have your assistants and so on, and you feel the tense situation, but you are not really involved in everything, of course.
So the anatomy of an exhibition, Franziska says. So in a way, Adam, one of the actors that obviously feature very prominently in EXERGUE is group of actors, is the curatorial team. It's a very strong curatorial team. It's a very multifaceted team. There's a lot of discussions happening, discussions that are shared, that are brought sort of to our attention, that we can follow. We follow the thinking process, the decision process throughout the different steps. So perhaps, can you talk a bit about this act of collective thinking and decision-making on one hand? And then as Andrea has pointed out, there is this sort of important question that sort of relates and doesn't relate to this question, which is to whom belongs the public institution? That sort of seems driving kind of question also throughout your work and the work of the curatorial team of Documenta 14.
Yeah, this question to, who owns Documenta is central, and I think that what we are observing right now is a kind of full takeover of this exhibition or this idea of Documenta by the state, which has appointed no less than 5 chief executive officers within the last 5 years or so. So since Documenta 14 ended, there is a constant change in the position of state-appointed officials that are meant to be the sort of managers of the process, and of course they must fail because the demands of the politicians are changing, and the external circumstances politically are also changing, and so each one must fail to fulfill these expectations of unspecific kind to do something, but what really? And then you have the artistic director or directors who are then appointed by the quasi-independent selection committee, but this selection committee also keeps falling apart. So it fell apart already twice in the run-up to Documenta 16, which sort of imploded as well. Documenta 15 imploded under allegations of anti-Semitism, as we remember, and Documenta 14 famously collapsed 4 days before the end of the show because of the financial scandal, which was sort of narrated far and wide by the media in Germany and elsewhere, and this narration was maintained by the Kassel and Hessian politicians just weeks before the elections in Germany, and so on and so forth. So I think that there is a kind of a problem with this exhibition that seems to be the most unloved enterprise, however a very important one in Germany. And now I'm not sure if something good can come out of something that is so unloved, you know. So I'm really looking forward to the developments with the Documenta 16, with the cleverness of the selection process. Lately, one can expect that there will be an appointment of an artistic director, and maybe they will even manage to hold it as planned, because this obsession with delivering things according to the plan seems to be also quite, typical culturally and politically.
So you think it's something specific German? So it's not.
No. It's just it's a pinnacle of the international technocracy that is taking over, and I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's it's not the Geist der Kapitalismus und protestantische Ethik or something like that. We are 100 years later, and I don't I'm refusing to be pitched in this hall of Germany hater or something like. Why should I? I mean, it's the most reasonable country in the world, after all. And so there seems to be a problem, and I think the problem has to do with this idea that this artistic freedom is in the, it's written in the sort of constitution of Documenta, and then each time that there is an attempt to exercise this artistic freedom, then there is a problem, because on the one hand the artistic freedom is sort of there and granted to the artistic direction of the show and to all the artists who are participating and other participants, but on the other hand, each time this artistic freedom is exercised, there is a big problem, and there starts, to be a kind of attempt to tame this artistic freedom. So there's a question of limits of this freedom, So I think what is happening now is just basically trying to define the limits or limitations. You know, it's like endless drawing and redrawing of limits or borders to something that might, you know, threaten the order or some kind of idea of order that seems to be very important to maintain.
Maybe Bifo says that at some point in the film, no, Bifo Birari, when he says we should actually feel ashamed. So, you know, in this sort of, let's say, quasi-cosmopolitan attempt to look back at the history, of coloniality and ongoing, and the aftermath of colonialism, there should be the feeling of being ashamed. There should be the feeling of, self-reflection and self-inspection, which obviously immediately creates, certainly on a political level, a question of responsibility and action. And so perhaps there is also something very much within, let's say, the contemporary moment that kind of triggers the relationship, which is not just structural and bureaucratic, which is not just about, you know, wanting to control and artistic freedom, but about exactly yet and still the question of decoloniality. We keep thinking. Do you want to say something or no? Yes.
I mean, it's interesting to think of shame as a kind of driving force, maybe, and you know, it's a kind of maybe it has to do with a sort of self. Like kind of denial or sort of, you know, feeling that something has to be covered or something has to be covered up. I'm not sure. I mean, the issue of coloniality or the coloniality of power. It is also something that can be studied in the very formative moment of Greece becoming a nation state or sovereign state after 1821, and immediately becoming also like a playground of European superpowers at that time, and a kind of, you know, the sort of Bavarian kingdom of sort. So it's an enormously tangled story, which I think has to do with the formation of modern nation states, including Germany and including Greece, through the 19th century, and the legacy of that is still not worked through properly, as we see in the debates that are currently taking place in Germany, and that are for instance, centering around the creation of the Humboldt Forum in Berlin, in the symbolic site of the reconstructed Berliner Schloss. So there's definitely a lot of specters that are haunting that country, and also they keep resurfacing in other places, and this legacy must be addressed and opened up through every exhibition that wants to say something about the now time. And I think Documenta 15, with all the problems that it had and with all the faults or missteps that it made of including anti-Semitic imagery in some of the works, was other than that an attempt to address this imbalance of power in a not entirely, decolonized cultural context of Western Europe and the US, and that's maybe why the reactions to it were so vehement. Another
topic that obviously runs through the film is, as Adam has just mentioned, the budgetary deficit, the sort of scandal of the deficit that exploded 4 days before the closing of Documenta in Kassel, but was lingering all along. It's a discussion that accompanies us, the viewer, throughout many, many episodes. And this is a question to you now, Dimitri. It feels that basically your attempt to both feature and concentrate also strongly on that question throughout the 14 episodes of the film. It seems that the antidote, in a way, or the way we as viewers are almost involved as the public to, let's say, to judge, to build an opinion, to review the process, to understand what has led to difficult situations. So you're sort of, there's an interpellation of the viewer in sense of the forum, the polis, and the sense that the sort of the best thing that one can offer culturally to a situation that is that entangled with political ambitions and complications is this idea of access, no? Of let's call it transparency, if it's not too loaded as a term, so that allowing us to view, I think as Franziska was also mentioning, to view things and processes and discussions and developments and things you stumble upon and you cannot make sense and you try again to figure out and to find a way. And so we're interpolated into that process. We're not only there as viewers, but we're constantly also trying to sort of see where we are within that narrative. So long question, transparency as, you know, a kind of a moment of democracy and hope, a hopefulness in sort of a democratic moment where democracy has been obviously mistreated on so many other levels.
Yes, this this notion of publicness was already in the DNA of the project of Documenta 14. So, I mean, when I started approaching it, like thinking about it, this also came as a theme. I mean, and also my presence in these meetings or processes, being like a witness with a camera. Also worked for the subjects. So, and we were also aware that this was within the context of a public institution. So nobody had something to hide. I mean, in the end it became a scandal by your financial thing, but it was not the main thing. It was an obstacle, but I mean, nobody was acting or thinking like he was doing something that shouldn't be public. It was all transparent, yeah, but not as an urge to be transparent. It was just after the scandal, it changed this footage into a witness of what happened, and because, you know, if there wasn't this scandal 4 days before the closing, for 2 years I was filming an artistic process. It could be a completely different film, and the fact that it became a scandal in this, I mean, this scandal is a pretext. Actually, I mean, it could never. It's a virtual budget made with virtual revenues, and they never thought that a double Documenta would probably cost more money, and there wasn't an institutional structure to accommodate such a move. So there were like not mistakes exactly, but it was there wasn't the framework for that production, and it failed in its numbers. But it was the political moment because they had elections in Kassel, and it was used as a lever. It was instrumentalized in a political battle. Let's have a scandal and hit this supervisory board or the previous one. And Documenta 14 was targeted for that. But the real reason is this question Adam made, who owns Documenta and whether Documenta should travel occasionally, which they didn't quite like. Of course, when this thing happened, this scandal, it was traumatic for many people who worked for this project. I mean, it was harshly criticized also before, and when you work in a team for 2 years, and there were really great expectations because it was a great project, and worked a lot on a collective level, and you could feel that, and that multiplies, the experience. Many people, artists, and also team members that I still meet, and they all express that Documenta 14 was not just an exhibition that we took part. It was like an exhibition that meant something for their lives. It was life-changing because you could feel it in a large scale. As a person. And so when this scandal happened and affected too many people who felt like, psychologically defeated or, offended. And I knew what the film should be about. I mean, I should defend it. And that's what I try to do. And bring some transparency, because, Documentas are very well documented events, both by press or art history or whatever. And I just wanted to add another tool to this, another item to this discussion.
Would you want to?
I would say it was a scandal to make a scandal out of this deficit, because when you think about big buildings, architects, they make a suggestion of numbers, and then the building got millions more, or you think of a piece of autobahn or something like that. What costs that? And also, yeah, and. There is no scandal about these things. So, about these bad critics, also Catherine David, she were attacked enormously after the Documenta for years. So she had so bad critics. Critics are, the journalists asked, where is art? Too much head, too intellectual. Where is the art, and all these things. They could not feel, or they could not see this poetical quality of this kind of show, of this exhibition. So, this.
Yeah, poetical quality. Maybe that's a good point, Andrea. Let's talk about the film before opening it to the public. There's obviously the specificity. This is a very long film, about 14 hours. And I think what you were starting to unravel or think through is very interesting, which is that these slow form, right? This very close reading of the process creates something very interesting again for the viewer, which is that your own thinking is almost in synchronicity with the thinking in the film. So this slowing down creates something reparative almost. I mean, not just reparative in the sense of, you know, we're seeing transparency as a form of recuperation of sort of a bit of history, but also for you as a viewer, slowing down, taking time, kind of de-accelerating, entering the story, taking the time to sort of think through different moments. And perhaps that's something you could explore a little bit more for us and give us your thoughts.
Okay. I will try a little bit. I've been asking myself what kind of film was this and why it was so fascinating and so intriguing, no? Why it couldn't cut. Watching, I probably would have watched, and actually watch it without stopping throughout the days as it could be possible. And I started making a sort of atlas of references, and I say, okay, this definitely is a work about a profession. That's why I mentioned a profession, because exactly as you were saying, you see what the work is of this, what the profession is, what so much is. How much is happening here within this? And then, so I was having in mind someone like Friedrich Zyman, or someone who made these incredibly important, monumental works that are non-judgmental about infrastructure. I was obviously thinking about Harun Farok. I was thinking about durational films, very long films, no? So Van Bing. But then there is something in this film that makes you really sticking on it, no? And obviously, I come from the town. I mean, I live now in the town where Edgar Wright lives now, and so Heimat 2 is a major example of something that keeps you looking and watching. But then it's a strange auto-fictional film, right? In fact, this with actors, and this is a proper, I call it documenta. So within all this, I think there are many qualities, but one of the qualities is the, I guess, extraordinary work of editing. No, there's an incredible editing, an incredible, probably exercise of thinking, how to edit and what to place when. So I just came checking in today again what was happening when, because I think the mosaic is extremely complicated, but extraordinarily composed. And there's a very let's say, specific use of sound and music and different kind of musics that keep appearing. I work on the tracks, on audio that slips ahead and before, like before and after, moment that are about to happen, already happened. It's a film shot with one camera, which is incredible. I mean, the moment in which I think, I don't know with what kind of, let's say, deep experience of experimental cinema, you really were like working like Jonas Mekas did, no? There is a scene of full intimacy when the EXERGUE becomes finally known, but actually then you move the camera and you take scenes that are happening somewhere else, and you hear the noise, the sound of the performance. So there's this real incredible composition there, like incredible level that that makes the work completely contemporary, you know. And I'm not big sees, I mean, watching, but I think there is something there about the logic of the seas that is extraordinary. So I try to say it in a sentence: a film that makes you think so much, whilst the film is processing thinking, and thinking is always at stake. Be the conversations that the team has, be before appearing occasionally, being Paul Preciado, and being that's really like a journey into what does it mean today thinking, no? And thinking together collectively. And so it becomes an organism, a thinking organism, a sensual or thinking organism. There is also something very sensual that to some extent doesn't actually really reveals the show. At the show, you don't see so much. I mean, what we remember of that show, it's not so much, or what I remember, it's not so much there, but it's something that makes you always stay in a state of suspension of disbelief, despite the film not being fictional. So it's like someone, I hope, will write about what it is, because it's very unusual, like, let's speak ontologically, no? So maybe I'm too complicated. Oh, okay.
Okay, the thinking business. Let's extend the thinking business. Any questions, please? Yes, thank you. Do you want me to? Yeah.
Yeah, is it working? Can you hear me? Yes. First of all, congratulations to the director for this monumental work of art. I have a question about the filmmaking process, because I myself am interested in documentary filmmaking. So how did you plan all this shooting? Like, did you sometimes have a preconception of what you wanted to get? Or was it just gathering as much footage as possible, and then later in the editing finding the structure? And how much footage did you have at the end, and how was the editing process? Like, was it difficult to find a narrative and a structure? Because it seems very fluid and organic. And then just one question for Adam. Like, how was it being filmed for such a long time and in almost all moments? Because when there's a camera, there's sometimes a performance. So did you at some point forget that you are being filmed, or was there sometimes the issue that you feel like you could perform or you not be yourself?
We need 2 episodes to answer all this, but I'll try to make it short. No, I didn't schedule the filming. I was just showing up every day and trying to understand what was happening and try to be there. Some people describe this methodology as fly on the wall, which I really don't enjoy so much. Because, fly on the wall. Yeah, no. Because, surveillance cameras are like fly on the wall. When you're a person, you're there. I mean, people see you, interact somehow. I prefer the term on the fly. This filming was on the fly. I was running all the time, going there, putting a tripod or having a camera, get out of my bag and be quick, because they were moving. They were not waiting for me to film them. Everybody had. I was just a guy with a camera. I was not making a film. So that was. The editing is another thing. I mean, it's nice. The editing is nice. You see. You it's like digging and finding little diamonds. So it's so enjoyable in the beginning, because you have this, you find diamonds every day. You get rewarded, and then you start to structure. But how to structure this thing? I mean, it's structured. I mean, there is the narration. I mean, the exhibition is also a narration, a narrative, whatever you call it. And I tried to take this narrative and make a new narrative on film language. So, because I had to respect the exhibition, the people, the way they were thinking, the way they were expressing, and how to make this, because it can sound really academic or intellectual, I mean, this process, but when it's actually acted by persons who make real decisions at the moment, or have, some other emotions, which are also very usual in cinema, because cinema it's all about motion and emotion. And what I tried really to focus was on this intellectual emotion. The thing you feel when you read something very important, or you have a conversation with somebody who's really smart, and you get this enjoyment, which is an intellectual emotion. And I try to convey this emotion in the film. It's maybe what you call the thinking. So the film makes you think, but that's what I felt also when I was editing. I mean, it was make me think, and then I wanted to convey that film.
Adam? Did you enjoy The Fly?
No, I don't like flies. But yeah, no. What it did to me to be filmed. I mean, it was an experiment in vivo, which sort of ended with a sort of. The experiment was successful, let's say. The subject of the experiment, which is me, was maybe less...
Survived.
That's not what I said. That's what you said. I mean, he believes in his, positive narration and love and so forth. But it made me think about the story of Peter Schlemihl by Adalbert de Chamisso, which is about the young man who trades his shadow with the devil and believes that this is not going to do anything to him, but he's wrong, because you just get rid of your shadow and then everything is ruined slowly but surely. So I felt a little like that, I felt there was a certain disenchantment process involved in this project of filming and laying things bare before they even started, because at the point when Dimitri approached us, or me, and then was introduced to other members of the team, we didn't really know what's gonna happen, and we immediately had to start showing this thing that was just being born, to the camera, to someone who was this kind of camera eye, like in Dziga Wiertow, depiction of the cinematic process or function of the filmmaker. So, in short, it was on the one hand helpful to have an external eye, sort of verifying your work all the time, although without commenting or passing judgments. But on the other hand, it was also something that that it takes enormous energy to sort of produce yourself for the camera for 2 years, I guess.
Thank you very much for your film. Just would like to ask, because every film actually, as for filmmaker, is changing us. I would like to know, just from Adam, how this film changed you in some way, or just impact. This one question, and the other question, just can you tell a little bit more about the censorship? For example, if you also had some self-censorship, if you had some moments like that. Thank you.
I think I managed to answer the first part of the question before, which was how the film changed me or something. It's very difficult to look at oneself on the screen for 14 hours. So I've watched it once and I don't want any more. For the second part concerning the self-censorship, I think we pretty much delivered what we wanted. I don't remember any worse, any worse than what we included actually. So, for good or bad, the exhibition delivered, according to the intention of participants, not only curators but also artists. And you see some of this pain or struggle in the film. Some extremely funny conversations between curators or those who are designated as curators and artists who are kind of playing their roles respectively. Yeah, it's all there it's an edit, of course. It's just one day of Documenta, you know.
Usually curators are very diplomatic. They do their job. They are not acting like artists. For me, Mr. Szymczyk is like a performer who is very honest and emotional. I have never seen that before. And that is, for me, the true revolution of this Documenta. I haven't seen it, but now I have seen the documentary. And I have to say, I've never seen that kind of view behind the curtain before from an official side. There are several critical statements from other directors and filmmakers, but I've never seen such exposition or such a brave work allowed from official side. So I think a revolution can't be made from something like the Documenta, because Documenta is an institution. It's not a. There are so many powerful forces behind it that it's kind of, for me, always nothing personal. And for me, the revolution in this specific example is coming from a kind of intimate, personal perspective. This is what I wanted to say. That was very special for me.
Maybe what is implied in the film also, by what was also discussed between the curators, is that, you know, we are also part of this, maybe of this institution, maybe in another level, but I mean the audience or the artists are part of the institution. It's another institutional level. It's not only the people who administrate it or have the power. The people also have the power to change. I mean, this film maybe shows some things that even the people who run Documenta don't know, in a sense, or never thought about, because they didn't have this experience of what is to actually make this cultural event. It's not like decision or the money. It's the labor, as Bifo says.
I think it's a film about work. The title is EXERGUE. That means out of the work, you know. EXERGUE is also a title of a short text which I placed both in both main publications of Documenta, in which I try to address on literally 2/3 of a page this question of the you know, who is the true owner of the Documenta. And what I propose there is that it belongs to those who make it, you know, and not to those who supervise it, you know. So for a moment we own it because we make it, you know, and then we don't anymore. But somebody else can, you know, if they really take this question of owning it seriously. They can, you know. It's a yes, of course, and the visitors, because I mean, the visitors make it into a kind of exhibition. Is a collection of let's say objects and durations in space or spaces, but it's through the visitors that is becoming a kind of diachronic event and not just a kind of static collection. So the visitors bring the element of time, and that is very important to make this exhibition what it truly becomes. And then one can think of the duration, you know, which is 100 days, which is kind of like a habit or whatever of Documenta, that it takes 100 days. So then we have 100 days in Athens, then we have 100 days in Kassel with a slight overlap. So in the end, even this temporality or temporalities get complicated, and through the kind of double presence of visitors, it becomes quite yeah, it becomes a journey that is very hard to grasp, but it is essentially only happening with the presence of, through the presence of visitors, who are also those who make it happen in the end.
I was surprised today. I saw the whole film, and of course, I already said so. I was totally in awe of being part of, being taken into this team and into this process, and I really enjoyed it. But now I think the end is very brave to have such an intimate end. And to tell also such an intimate story. Did you have other options to? I'm really touched by seeing this persona so much hurt and then coming back to life. It's like a happy ending that you give us. You could have chosen a different end. And I think this. I think this gives the whole film also a very much more of an emotional tint because it ends like that.
Yeah, also thanks again. Also for the journey, the last 3 days, it was amazing. It could have really become a habit now, skipping going to the office, but coming to the cinema every day. However, my question would be, how was this scandal or document as such was perceived in Athens?
It wasn't such big news in Athens. I mean, of course, it was in the papers, but nobody was affected. I mean, it was not about Greek money or something. Documenta in Athens was already closed, so like there was no. It was not an Athenian. Yeah, it was reported, but you know, if I think those days. When the Greek audience read that the German institution has a deficit, I mean, nobody really, you know, wet his eyes, you know. How it came. Good, very good. Yeah.
Was it appreciated that it came to Athens? Was there any?
No, somehow it was like. Implied that Athens was responsible, but Athens was not responsible because, you know, they didn't handle any money. It's it was not big deal in Athens. The scandal. The scandal was mostly a German, very German issue, and it was handled as such.
The documenta as such, was it well perceived?
Yeah, actually, I mean, until now, everybody kind of realizes how important it was that Documenta has been to Athens. You know, it brought a new knowledge and experience to hundreds of thousands of people who, you know, had this Documenta experience. It's really important. At that time, there were a lot of visitors, of course, who enjoyed the show. It was like 300,000 visitors in Athens, which was like it's quite good number. I mean, you can feel the sense of what the real response was, because, you know, what was discussed, it's a different thing, because, you know, the people who make these discussions are most probably for the art scene, and the art scene is notoriously famous for such discussions. Now I think everybody accepts that Documenta was really important being in Athens. It was a great opportunity.
I also first and foremost want to say thank you for this movie. It's been a long time that I was so touched and stimulated and angry at the same time, and happy. Angry because all of this is still so current. And I have a question to Adam, at the risk of repeating a little bit, but we talked about the notion of shame. And when they asked you how you felt about watching the movie, or you said, I'm only going to watch it once. And I was wondering, are there moments of shame when you watched it? It's very personal, but so was the movie, so... maybe.
Yeah, sure. Yes, certainly. I mean, I wouldn't, you know... I wouldn't want to be that person, actually. You know, I would love to be someone else. Yeah, it troubles me that I could not do better, you know. So, on personal level, for me it's a confrontation with a pretty raw picture, you know, of a person who I also tend to see as a stranger, and I judge this person, and the judgment is not great, you know. I have some sympathy and some understanding, but I always think I could have done better, or done it in a different way, both as an exhibition and the way of handling the events, handling people, you know. Maybe there was too much anger. I don't know. Probably. So I wish I was a different person, but yeah, it was just me like this, you know. So hard to speak about myself in the third person, you know. It's hard enough to see it on the screen, and I try to avoid this kind of pseudo psychoanalysis. You know, or auto-psychoanalysis. I'm not professional, you know. I leave it to analysts who are professional. So it's just very, very difficult to, on the one hand, be in it, and on the other hand, discuss the film, discuss the, you know, there's so many levels, like meta levels of the project that this film is bringing about. That maybe I'm not the best person to, you know, I would really like to, in the future, leave it to the discussion of those who will watch the film and the director, meaning Dimitris. So, yeah.
Maybe I can ask something to the emotion and sound, because as you, Adam, pointed out, the difficulties in that process, also emotionally. In the last part, I think it's chapter 14, close before the opening of the Athens exhibition, the music in the taxi becomes quite strong, very dramatic. So just to point it out, now there will come a big catastrophe, kind of. So it was for me. And then we have the opening, and Adam is saying in the taxi, "Oh, I feel very alone," and etc., etc. And the music underlines that a lot. Not even in this scene. There are more and more. The music is also guiding us through the emotions of the whole process. Maybe you can, and even there are We see performances, and also there are external music over the performances. So the music has certain different roles in the whole film. Maybe you could say something about your ideas and concept?
Music, I mean, it's a cinematic tool in the sense it's totally narrative tool, because you can control simultaneously the tempo, the rhythm, and the emotion. And if you also do that on an early stage and start working with specific music on your footage, then you have more levels to control it. And that's the artistic aspect. And there's also a technical aspect that I try to hide how bad the sound is, really. Because otherwise you would go crazy if you would hear every different atmosphere that changes all the time.